Welcome to another episode of The Modern Moron. Unless you're doing a podcast live or daily, it's impossible to keep up with the news cycle these days, so anything I do on our current craziness in Washington will only be different the next day. Consequently, as of this recording, I'm going back to last week's scandal, which at one point was being referred to as Ukraine-gate. Seems old, doesn't it? I speak with my Ukraine comrade about the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. He was the star and creator of a comedy in Ukraine called Servant of the People. The name of the show has become an official political party in Ukraine, and this year Zelensky won the presidency by a landslide, claiming over 73% of the popular vote. Think about that. When was the last time a U.S. president won an election by that margin? Zelensky is a comedian who helped create the show, where a school teacher goes on a rant about the corruption in Ukraine. A student records it on their phone, the video goes viral, and the teacher becomes the president. In talking with my comrade, he tells us a couple of stories of what the president has been up to in his country besides a phone call with Volodymyr Putin. Say that 3 times fast. The audio in this episode is not perfect, as for security purposes, we recorded it in a concrete bunker located a half-mile below ground. Actually, it was recorded in an office, but it sounds a lot more dramatic the other way, doesn't it? At some point, there are news clips from Ukrainian news that my friend is loosely translating for us, and they're playing in the background. It seems this scandal, which has prompted an impeachment inquiry, will not bode well for either our president or the Democratic frontrunner, Joe Biden. It's Insane in the Ukraine, Part 2, on The Modern Moron. So, I'm with my comrade.
Hello.
Today is Friday the 27th, and earlier this week I asked you, hey, let's talk about the president of Ukraine, just to talk about the crazy stuff that he's doing within his own country, trying to get rid of corruption. And then, then something crazy happened. He talked to the president of the United States.
Yep.
And he said, I want you to do us a favor before we give you $500 million worth of Javelin missiles. I want you to check up on Joe Biden. And I feel like Volodymyr Zelensky, am I pronouncing his name?
Yeah, you got it.
He's kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. He's at war with Russia. He's bordered right up against Russia. He needs some missiles. So, yeah, for $500 million worth of missiles, he's trying to take care of his people, you know?
Yeah.
And now he's caught in all this stuff. He's like, hey, bro, I don't want to take any sides. I just would like to get some missiles.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said, because I saw a follow-up interview with a bunch of Ukrainian reporters, as well as some American ones, just recently. And so one of the questions was like, how do you feel about being popular in U.S. now? And he's like, well, that's all fine and dandy, but like my main concern is Ukraine. You know, This is not the only conversation. I've just had conversation with Merkel and on all these others.
Right.
And it's along the same lines. Hey, thank you for your help. We can use all the help we can get.
Right.
There was another question asking him, like, are you going to look into Joe Biden's son or Joe Biden or like any of that was Trump was asking you about? And he's like, there's a prosecution office, right? You know, general attorney, all that, right? Whatever what would be the equivalent?
I have no idea.
Anyway, general attorney's office, whatever. They look at corruption and looking at. He's like, hey, I don't even know like what their top priorities are. I haven't even spoken to them in detail yet. All that stuff gets sent to them, and then I'm trusting them to figure out and look into everything, right?
Right.
So he's like, I just talked to a couple of other foreign leaders, and they asked me about another specific name or another business or another entity, and it's like, I don't know, you know, like I know as much as they do at that point. So I'm just asking my administration to go through the regular process of looking at corruption. I'm not doing anybody any favors. You know?
If there's dirt there, they'll find it.
Right.
But I'm not going to create dirt.
Exactly. So that's at least his story. You know,
right.
That's what he's saying.
So he's kind of stuck. He needs those missiles.
Yeah.
And I'm told they're called Javelin missiles, which are like kind of like a old school bazooka.
Yeah.
Only it's a full-on missile.
Except
I saw one
like
launched.
They're smart. So like they'll actually track the vehicle and do the work for you. So as soon as you lock it in, you just you point and shoot.
Yeah, I saw somebody shoot it. It's like over the shoulder. You shoot it, but then that thing takes off and it's going somewhere.
Yeah,
it's not. You don't aim it. There's no aiming.
No, there's no aiming. It goes up in the sky just like a missile.
That's a lot of missiles. $500 million. I mean, I think say $400 million.
So are they released now? Do you know?
What I heard was, because I read an article, because this whole impeachment baloney, it's going to do what it does in the House of Representatives.
Right.
And then it goes over to the House, or over to the Senate, which is Mitch McConnell and the Republican majority. And it's probably going to fizzle out there.
Right.
However, I think I heard Mitch McConnell had said, it's okay, let's give him the money. And then Trump said, hang on a second.
And that was before the call, right?
I believe so.
Okay.
But within days of it, I think maybe Trump was thinking of doing this. He said, hold on a minute, let's hold on to that money until I make a phone call.
It's funny because I think that's what's on his mind, and he's sort of like rambling, not thinking about the consequences of...
He did say, need you to do us a favor, though.
Literally said well, under the pretext of corruption, but in his mind, he's thinking, let's get some dirt. He should have just said, hey, I need you to take care of all the corruption. For example.
That gets to what I really wanted to talk about before all this other nonsense, is that Ukraine, I don't even know where to put it on the top ranking corrupted governments. Ukraine's right up there.
It's the clearinghouse of corruption.
It's the clearinghouse of corruption. And so this poor guy is trying to take care of his own corruption. And now Trump comes over and says, hey, I want you to look up some of my... He's busy with his own corruption.
Right.
And that's what I wanted to talk about, because, you follow these YouTube channels. And is that your prime resource of news, and they're all in Russian or
Ukrainian? What's kind of crazy is, like, think of a reality show. The president, there's pretty much a camera crew following him around as he's visiting all these different provinces around Ukraine. Think of like a reality show. Imagine there'd be like 2-3 camera guys with microphones following Trump everywhere he goes.
It's the press corps.
Right, it's the press corps, but this is like more of a reality.
He's hired them?
I'm not sure.
Or they just tag along like a paparazzi?
Maybe, but the result of that is like a YouTube channel, which is Z Life or something like that if you were to translate it. But basically they're just following him, and they're not there 100% of the time, but they're recording these upfront conversations he's having with governors and stuff, and
governors.
Governors of provinces and all this stuff. Or they record some crazy stuff, like he'll basically ask sometimes for resignations from some of these people. He'll ask to fire like half of their staff. And then
what was the one you were telling me about?
There was one there that was like a press conference kind of thing, and the main guy that was supposed to be there to represent this region was not there, so he literally had his subordinate dial him on speakerphone while all the cameras were rolling. Then he ended up calling that guy himself and then said, hey, I want to see you in my office tomorrow or as soon as possible, on camera, while the other guy's reason for not being there was he was on his re-election campaign. So how do you think that worked out for him? Another instance was, why isn't this road built? Why are the roads so crappy here? And he's like, well, we don't have enough funds. He's like, well, all right, what are you driving? And the guy's driving like $130,000 Range Rover, He's like, why don't you finish the road with that money, by selling that car, or I'll have your resignation.
And what does the guy say? Yes, sir, right away. Sir.
Basically.
So that's awesome.
His campaign was literally on social media, right? And so he's very receptive to that kind of feedback. So I don't know where he gets, how he chooses to go to these like worst problem areas, but I think it's all based on social media. And so people will like reach out and call in or something and say, hey, like there's like
fishy's going on over here.
And he'll determine which places to go, and then he'll go there and just start cleaning house and this was even before the parliament got reelected in his favor.
Didn't he fire parliament in his inaugural speech?
During his inaugural speech, he basically said, all right, I'm letting all you go.
But by letting them go, it doesn't mean they would get reelected.
Forces a re-election.
They could have used their old political contacts and corruption to get reelected. So that didn't necessarily take care of the problem.
It did to an extent, because a lot of them didn't get reelected. Most of them didn't.
Oh, really?
And a lot of new people came in that were part of his party, which is called Slave of the People. Just like his most popular show that he created as a director and the main star.
What is the channel that you YouTube when you want to look up something on him?
I'm trying to think if there's any like translated news. I think it's mostly like Ukrainian, Russian outlets. You might find some stuff in Europe.
Sky News is what I had found. That's where I found him giving his inaugural speech.
It's going to be snippets, like if you want to see the whole, like, dive deep.
You have to listen to it.
Yeah,
in Russian.
There's just no translation available.
Well, that's what you're here for.
So this Z Life is like the official one. There's a couple of others.
Like what? That's a short one.
This one here?
What's happening in this guy? That's him, right?
He's got the second guy, Bogdan, in charge. That like his, I don't know,
Vice president?
Not vice president, but he's always there with him, just like advising him. And he's the prime minister. And just them together as a team going around, and they're just like kicking ass and taking names. But like one of the first things they did is Ukraine had this weird law on the books that any elected official was immune from the law. So they literally could shoot somebody in broad daylight or run somebody over, and they're like exempt. And so that led to convoys of VIP vehicles going through red lights and just not caring, giving a damn, and nobody could do anything about it. So this is the first law they passed, this new parliament, is they got rid of that protection.
That one?
Not this video, but in general. This is one of the first things they did. Somebody was late, they called their name and they were late, and so he got a talking to in front of everybody for being late.
By who?
By the speaker.
That would not happen.
Yeah.
Nobody cares here.
Yeah, right.
You can not show up for the whole day.
So you know how the parliament would vote on issues and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So for the longest time in the previous administration, there would almost be nobody there ever, and they would
like in this country.
They would just hire people to push buttons for them and vote yes or no.
Oh, so they could say vote yes on this, no on this, and just press
they
the
would
button.
they would just never even show up. It's whoever pays them more money is how they vote, basically. Which is sort of
not
that's
not
it's a little bit
unfamiliar.
Less evolved than this one, but I'm trying to think. There's a couple of other channels. Like if you just search for his name, there's just tons of like independent channels that also essentially just follow him. And
in your community here, is just everybody buzzing about Zelensky right now? Or does everybody...
It's sort of like divided, just like, I think it really is sort of divided a little bit, because people here are like thinking of the previous guy, like, oh yeah, he's really, because the previous guy made
what was his name?
Poroshenko.
He was bad news.
Yeah, he made a good name on like, he used the military, like the patriotism in the military to basically seem like, his it's all about Ukraine and all this stuff, but meanwhile multiplying his income and assets by like...
You had said Ukraine is one of the poorest countries in Europe.
Yeah.
And he is like...
One of the richest.
One of the richest individuals in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a problem there.
Right. So here's a video titled "Trump Sucked in Zelensky into a Multinational Scandal."
Він лише за одним виданням публікують інформацію, отриману від наближених до президента Трампа джерел. Так, Вашингтон...
So what is she saying?
She's saying that Trump on numerous times denied to meet with Zelensky in the White House until this phone call happened.
Oh, now because he thinks he's got dirt on Biden.
Зеленським 25 липня Дональд Трамп неодноразово просив його розслідувати корупцію родини суперника Трампа на виборах.
He said Trump was asking Zelensky numerous times to investigate Biden, right? The Biden connection.
For months, or?
Well, I think she's talking about during this phone call.
Oh, right.
Як нас втягнули в американську передвиборну гру, Яна Слісарчук розкаже. Два американські скандали от-от об'єднаються в один, і в кожному чільне місце посідає Україна. Йдеться про слідство...
She's saying two scandals, and Ukraine's involved in both. I think they're talking about like Manafort and the previous one, also an election-related scandal.
Right.
And this
and
one.
she's obviously, that's the White House behind her, so she's an American correspondent.
Написаний агентом спецслужб, обуреним поведінкою Дональда Трампа в розмові з одним зі світових лідерів. Дедалі більше людей у Вашингтоні схиляються до думки, йшлося про розмову з Володимиром Зеленським.
So they're saying it sounds like most people in the U.S. are thinking that the conversation Ukraine was kind of used, a little bit for political purposes or whatever.
And Trump had Zelensky kind of over a barrel because he needs that money to fight Russia.
Right. And they're just quoting Trump and what he was saying.
Right. Everybody's hands are dirty in this.
Yeah, and they're now talking about how Biden got rid of the main prosecutor in Ukraine because previously that main prosecutor in the previous administration started getting to his son and some corrupt connections there.
Getting to his son?
Yeah, and Joe Biden came in there, went to Ukraine, met with some officials, and got this guy removed.
Why was that prosecutor after Biden's son?
Because there was some stuff,
Something fishy
stuff
going on?
Yeah.
But that first prosecutor for Ukraine was probably corrupt as well, or not?
I don't know, maybe, but it's hard to say. But what they're saying now is that Biden, with his influence, came in and got him
in 2014,
Yeah.
approximately. What a mess.
Yeah, and so this is a video of Joe Biden that he came in and basically said, "You're not getting this money or
It was
whatever."
$1 billion.
$1 billion, exactly. And he said that son of a bitch was gone in like
If you
a week
get rid
or
of him
something.
and
Yeah.
you get the money, if you
Yeah.
don't get, and he was gone. And,
Yeah.
and Biden was bragging about that?
Yeah. So that's Biden's son saying there's no reason to really investigate anything. I feel bad for Ukraine because they've got nothing.
Oh, yeah, does he?
Yeah, yeah.
That's Biden's son?
Yeah.
That's Biden's son?
Yeah.
That must be a different son, because that's not the son that I've seen. That must be, I don't think that's Biden's son, yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, there's no, I can see him the way he's shaking his head. Yeah, there's nothing.
Well, you saw the clip, right? You saw the clip of Trump's tweet when you heard it now. Trump's tweet, like a few days ago, right before this thing broke.
I'm sure
Basically, let me just do a search real quick. Twitter, Trump. Basically, it's Biden contradicting himself on this issue.
Biden contradicting himself.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's blood on everybody's hands.
Right.
They're all dirty. I mean, Biden's son was working for that gas company in Ukraine, making $50,000 a month.
Yeah.
Oh, how nice.
Right. You'd have to like search Google for this, but anyway, yeah, it's pretty funny. That's weird. What are they doing?
What if it got rid of, like, all this leads toward, I just feel bad for Ukraine a little bit. They just want to clean things up a little bit, clean up their yard.
Right.
And they need some help because Russia's throwing their trash or I mean, why is Russia still after Ukraine? They could smash them with their thumb if they wanted, right? Russia, if they wanted?
I mean, yeah, sort of. It's like there's probably limits, right, to what kind of war they would be able to fight. But it's just, I think, like in today's world, it's all about proxy war, indirect influence, brainwashing people.
What's the relationship between Zelensky and Putin? Are they on speaking
No,
terms?
they're speaking. Yeah, and I think during this last UN meeting, Zelensky ran into. He was actually standing in line next to the Russia's prime minister, I think, and Russia's prime minister was like, "Hey, I feel bad for the conflict, on your border and all that stuff. Let's
Wait a minute, it's not my border. It's both of our border."
yeah. I don't know. So something says along the lines of like, I hope it turns out well. And it's like, and Zelensky is like, well, yeah, we're ready. Let's exchange our people and let us take our territory back. Yeah,
prisoners. Right. Releasing prisoners.
Yeah, and that happened recently.
That was sometime.
The sailors, they got those sailors.
Yes,
back.
yeah, I do remember something about that.
Yep. So it's.
Besides corruption, what is Ukraine's biggest export? I mean, if they were going to export something, what would that be?
Ukraine?
Yeah.
They're the breadbasket of Europe. I mean, they're literally...
Fertile soil? So they agriculture.
Yeah, it's the best soil in Europe and huge exports in all kinds of grains, agriculture, and then also starting to become like they're starting to become like the China for Europe.
Manufacturing?
Like manufacturing, yeah, like higher quality manufacturing.
I really wish the best for President Zelensky. I truly do. It seems he's in a little over his head with the international politics, but the poor guy is just trying to get his own small country cleaned up a little bit while keeping one of the world's superpowers, that being Russia, off his back. I hope he does it. I hope he does it so well that it becomes a model for other countries, the same way healthcare in other countries has become a model for our fast food industry. This next election looks to be a muckraking festival like we've never seen. It seems like it's going to be a contest to see who can survive the scandal storm, which makes me want to see a younger candidate with less of a history to have to look into. Keep your eye on Andrew Yang in the Democratic Party, but he favors a concept called universal basic income. Try this test. Go up to the nearest Republican you can find and say the term universal basic income and see if that triggers their gag reflex. If it doesn't, you probably didn't say it correctly, or you didn't say it loud enough, as if you were demanding it as a basic human right. After the dust settles, maybe the top candidates will all fall away and we can get our own version of Zelensky. From the left or the right, I really don't care at this point. But just a dash of integrity would be nice, no matter who he is.
Male chauvinist pig.
Thank you for listening to The Modern Moron. We'll see you next time.